The gentle clinking of silver against fine china stopped abruptly. The low hum of conversation at l'Orangerie, Manhattan's most exclusive French restaurant, died instantly. All eyes turned to Table 4, the golden table, where Julian Thorpe, a tech mogul worth $6 billion, stood red-faced, pointing a trembling, manicured finger at a young waitress. He had just loudly declared to the entire room that she was too stupid to even read the menu she was holding. He expected her to cry. He expected her to beg for forgiveness to keep her job. Instead, the waitress, Sunny, straightened her back, adjusted her apron, and looked him dead in the eye. She didn't apologize. Instead, she did something that would cost Julian much more than the price of the dinner. She opened her mouth and silenced the billionaire with a response that would become legendary. This is the story of how arrogance met its match in the most unexpected place. Sunny adjusted the collar of her starch-white shirt, feeling the familiar, dull ache in her lower back. It was 7:45 p.m. on a Friday night at l'Orangerie, the 3 Michelin-star establishment tucked away on the Upper East Side of New York City. The air inside smelled of brown butter, truffle shavings, and old money. To the patrons dining here, Sunny was part of the furniture. She was a moving mannequin in a black vest and black trousers, designed to be present only when a wine glass needed refilling and invisible the moment the liquid hit the rim. "Table 4 is opening up in 10 minutes, whispered Jean-Luc. The maître d' Jean-Luc was a man who treated the seating chart like a military campaign. He had a mustache that seemed waxed into a permanent sneer, though he had a soft spot for Sunny. The reservation is for Julian Thorpe. Sunny felt a cold knot form in her stomach. Everyone in the service industry in New York knew the name Julian Thorpe. He was the CEO of Vertex Dynamics, a man who had made his first billion by 25 and had spent every year since convincing the world that money was a substitute for manners. He was notorious for sending food back, undertipping, and verbally dressing down staff for sport. "Understood," Sunny said, her voice calm. He requested the 1982 Petrus be decanted before his arrival, Jean-Luc noted, checking his iPad Pro. "And Sunny?" "Please." "He's looking for a reason to cause a scene. His stock took a hit this morning. Don't give him the ammunition." "I'll be a ghost, Jean-Luc," she promised. Sunny retreated to the service station, her eyes scanning the dining room. She wasn't just a waitress, though that was the only label the patrons saw. By day, Sunny Vance was a doctoral candidate at Columbia University, specializing in 18th-century French literature and linguistics. She was 2 chapters away from finishing a dissertation on the evolution of dialect in the court of Louis XV. But scholarships didn't cover the rent in Manhattan, and her mother's medical bills in Ohio were a hungry beast that needed constant feeding. So she traded her books for a wine key 5 nights a week. She checked her appearance in the reflection of the polished brass espresso machine. No loose hairs, no smudged makeup. Perfect armor for a battlefield where the weapons were snide comments and snap judgments. At 8 p.m. exactly, the heavy oak doors swung open. Julian Thorpe walked in, as if he owned the oxygen everyone else was breathing. He was wearing a bespoke Brioni suit that cost more than Sunny's entire student loan debt. On his wrist sat a Patek Philippe Nautilus, the rose gold catching the ambient light. He was handsome in a sharp, predatory way, but his eyes were cold, scanning the room not for beauty, but for flaws. Clinging to his arm was a woman who looked like she had walked straight off a Vogue cover. She was tall, wearing a shimmering emerald dress that hugged her frame, with nervous eyes that darted around the room. This was Isabella, a rising model who had been seen on Thorpe's arm for the last 3 weeks. The tabloids called them a power couple. But from where Sunny stood, Isabella looked more like a hostage than a girlfriend. "Mr. Thorpe," Jean-Luc greeted him with a bow that was respectful, but not servile. "Right this way." Julian didn't acknowledge the greeting. He didn't even look at Jean-Luc. He simply kept walking, pulling Isabella along, assuming the path would clear for him. It did. They reached table 4, the best seat in the house, nestled in a semi-private alcove with a view of the central garden. Sunny stepped forward, pulling out Isabella's chair. "Good evening," Sunny said softly. "Welcome to l'Orangerie." Julian sat down heavily, Throwing his napkin onto the table rather than placing it on his lap, he looked at Sunny for the first time, his gaze raking over her uniform with a look of undisguised boredom. "Water," Julian barked. "Sparkling. And make sure it's actually cold this time. Last time I was here, it was tepid. I don't pay $500 a plate for tepid water." "Of course, sir," Sunny said, her face a mask of professional neutrality. "I will bring the San Pellegrino immediately." "And the wine?" Julian demanded, drumming his fingers on the white tablecloth. "It is breathing at the decanting station, sir. I will pour it momentarily." HMPH. Julian turned his back on her, focusing his attention on Isabella, or rather, at the necklace she was wearing. "You know, that diamond looks small in this lighting. Remind me to upgrade you next week." Isabella offered a weak smile. "It's beautiful, Julian. You don't have to." "I said I'll upgrade it." He cut her off. Sunny retreated to the back. Her hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the effort of holding back her distaste. She grabbed the chilled bottle of San Pellegrino, took a deep breath, and reminded herself of the goal: rent, medical bills, the dissertation. She walked back to the table, pouring the water with practiced precision. Not a drop spilled. "Menus," Julian snapped, not looking up. Sunny handed them the large, leather-bound menus. The menu at L'Orangerie was entirely in French, with no English translations. It was a pretension the owner, Chef Henri, insisted upon. He believed that if you came to his restaurant, you should respect the language of the cuisine. Julian opened the menu and stared at it. His brow furrowed slightly. Sunny stood a respectful distance away, hands clasped behind her back. She watched Julian's eyes dart across the page. He was squinting. The silence stretched, becoming awkward. "Is everything all right, sir?" Sunny asked gently. "Would you like me to explain the menu degustation this evening?" Julian looked up, his face flushing a dangerous shade of red. He snapped the menu shut. "I know what I'm reading," he spat. "I don't need a servant to read for me." "My apologies," Sunny said. "I only meant to assist." "Assist?" Julian let out a cruel, barking laugh. He looked at Isabella. "Did you hear that? She wants to assist me. I run a Fortune 500 company, and this girl thinks she needs to help me read." Isabella looked down at her plate, embarrassed. "Julian, please. She's just doing her job." "Her job is to bring me food, not to insult my intelligence," Julian hissed. He turned back to Sunny, a malicious glint in his eye. He was feeling small because he couldn't understand the complex French descriptions, and he needed to make someone else feel smaller to compensate. "Since you're so eager to help," Julian said, his voice dripping with sarcasm, "why don't you come here?" Sunny stepped closer. "Yes, sir." "Tell me." He pointed a finger at her chest, not touching her, but invading her space. "Do you even know what you're serving, or do you just memorize the sounds like a parrot?" The restaurant was filling up. The clinking of glasses and the low murmur of conversation provided a backdrop to the tension radiating from table 4. Sunny held Julian's gaze. She saw the insecurity behind the arrogance. It was a look she had studied in literature, the petty tyrant who fears exposure. "I am familiar with the menu, sir," Sunny replied calmly. "Familiar?" Julian mocked. He opened the menu again, stabbing his finger at a complicated entry in the middle of the page. It was the riz de veau braisé au mori et vin jaune. Sweetbreads braised with morel mushrooms and yellow wine. "Read this," Julian commanded, "and tell me what it is, in English, if you can." He was setting a trap. He assumed she was an uneducated girl working a dead-end job. He assumed she would stumble over the pronunciation or give a vague description. Sunny looked down at the line he was pointing to. "That is the riz de veau," she explained. "It is veal sweetbreads, braised slowly with morel mushrooms, and a sauce made from vin jaune, a special yellow wine from the Jura region of France." Julian blinked. He hadn't expected her to know the specifics of the wine region. But he recovered quickly. He couldn't let her win. "Sweetbreads?" He wrinkled his nose. "That sounds disgusting. Why would I want bread?" Sunny paused. "Sir, sweetbreads are not bread. They are the thymus gland of the calf. It is a delicacy. Julian slammed his hand on the table. The cutlery jumped. A few heads at nearby tables turned. I know what they are, he lied loudly. I was testing you, and you failed. You didn't mention the glaze. I saw the chef on TV. He uses a glaze. The glaze is a reduction of the vin jaune, sir, Sunny said, her voice remaining steady despite her heart hammering against her ribs. Stop talking back to me, Julian shouted. Now the restaurant went quiet. The ambient noise dropped away. Jean-Luc, the maitre d', started walking toward the table, his face pale. He knew Julian Thorpe could ruin the restaurant's reputation with a single tweet or a call to his friends in the media. Is there a problem, Monsieur Thorpe? Jean-Luc asked, arriving at the table. Yes, there is a problem. Julian sneered, gesturing at Sunny as if she were a piece of rotting garbage. Your waitress is incompetent. She's condescending. And frankly, she's ruining my appetite. Sunny looked at Jean-Luc. She saw the panic in his eyes. He needed to defuse the situation. Sunny, Jean-Luc said, his voice low, perhaps you should check on table 7. No, Julian interrupted. She stays. I want to order. And I want her to take the order so I can make sure she gets it right. Unless she's too stupid to write it down, too. Isabella reached out and touched Julian's hand. Julian, stop. You're making a scene. I am the customer, Julian pulled his hand away. The customer is king, and this peasant is forgetting her place. He looked at Sunny with a smirk. He enjoyed this. He enjoyed the power. He wanted to break her. He wanted to see her cry in front of the room. Since you know so much about the food, Julian said, leaning back and crossing his arms over his expensive suit, let's talk about the wine. I ordered the Petrus. Bring it. Sunny nodded and walked to the decanting station. She picked up the crystal decanter containing the 1982 Petrus, a wine that cost more than a Honda Civic. She brought it to the table, along with 2 large Bordeaux glasses. She poured a small taste for Julian. He swirled the glass violently, risking a spill. He took a sip, swished it around his mouth, and swallowed. He made a face. It's corked, he announced loudly. Sunny froze. Sir? I said it's corked! It tastes like wet cardboard! Take it away! Bring me another bottle! Sunny looked at the bottle. She had smelled the cork herself when she opened it. It was perfect. She had caught the aroma of the wine as she decanted it. Rich black truffle, spice, and dark fruit. It was flawless. Sir, Sunny said carefully, I can assure you the wine is in perfect condition. The maitre d' also inspected the nose. Are you calling me a liar? Julian's voice rose an octave. I have a cellar with 3,000 bottles. I know what corked wine tastes like. This is garbage. Take it away. He was bluffing. He didn't like the taste. It was too earthy for his unsophisticated palate, which preferred sugary, fruit-forward wines, and he wanted to flex his power by sending back a $5,000 bottle. Sir, if I take this bottle away, we will have to charge you for it unless it is actually defective, Sunny said. It was restaurant policy. Charge me? Julian stood up. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. You think I care about the money? I could buy this entire building and turn it into a parking lot for my assistants. How dare you talk to me about money? You're a waitress. You probably can't even afford the shoes you're wearing. He turned to the room, arms wide, addressing the other diners. Can you believe this? He shouted. I come here for a nice dinner, and I get lectured by a girl who can't even read the menu properly. Look at her. She probably doesn't even speak English properly, let alone French. That was the breaking point. Sunny felt something snap inside her. Not a snap of fragility, but the snapping of a lock falling away. The exhaustion, the double shifts, the late night studying Voltaire, the years of struggling while men like this failed upward. It all coalesced into a cold, hard diamond of resolve. She looked at Jean-Luc, who was about to apologize profusely to Julian. She shook her head slightly. Sunny stepped forward. She didn't look down. She didn't cower. She looked Julian Thorpe directly in the eyes. The silence in l'orangerie was absolute. Even the kitchen staff had paused, peering out through the porthole windows of the swinging doors. Julian was breathing heavily. A smug grin plastered on his face. He thought he had won. He thought she was about to crumble. Sunny took a breath. When she spoke, her voice wasn't loud, but it projected to every corner of the room with the clarity of a bell. "Monsieur Thorpe," she began. But she didn't continue in English. "Votre comportement est non seulement impoli, mais il trahit une ignorance profonde de la culture que vous prétendez apprécier," she said. Her French was not just good, it was perfect. It was the French of the Sorbonne, refined, elegant, and sharper than a scalpel. Translation: your behavior is not only rude, but it betrays a profound ignorance of the culture you claim to appreciate. Julian's smile faltered. "What? Speak English." Sonny ignored him. She gestured to the bottle of wine. "Ce n'est pas le vin qui est bouchonné, monsieur. C'est votre palais qui manque de sophistication," she continued, her accent flawless. "Vous avez commandé un Petrus 1982, un vin connu pour ses notes terreuses et ses arômes de truffe. Si que vous goûtez, c'est la complexité de L, age, quelque chose que l'argent ne peut malheureusement pas acheter." Translation: it is not the wine that is corked, sir. It is your palate that lacks sophistication. You ordered a Petrus 1982, a wine known for its earthy notes and truffle aromas. What you are tasting is the complexity of age, something that money, unfortunately, cannot buy. Isabella's jaw dropped. She looked from Julian to Sonny, her eyes widening. Julian looked like he had been slapped. He understood enough to know he was being insulted, but he couldn't parse the specific words, which made him feel impotent. "I said speak English," he screamed, his face turning a violent shade of purple. "Stop speaking that gibberish." Sonny switched back to English effortlessly. The transition was so smooth it was jarring. "I said, Mr. Thorpe, that the wine is not corked. It is perfect. You are simply unable to appreciate it because you are accustomed to drinking labels, not wine." A gasp went through the room. "And as for the menu," Sonny continued, stepping closer to the table. She picked up the menu he had discarded. "You claimed I couldn't read it. Yet, earlier when you attempted to order the escargots, you pronounced it escargots, with a hard T. You also asked for the coq au vin, but asked the chef to remove the wine sauce because you don't like soggy chicken." A low titter of laughter rippled through the dining room. Someone at table 8 actually snorted. Julian looked around, realizing the audience was turning against him. You listen to me." "No, Mr. Thorpe," Sonny said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming steel. "You listen. I am a doctoral candidate in Romance languages. I speak 4 languages fluently. I am working this job to pay for my education so I can contribute something of value to this world. You, on the other hand, treat service staff like doormats to inflate your own fragile ego." She placed the menu gently back on the table. "You can fire me," she said to Jean-Luc, who was staring at her with his mouth open. "But I will not be insulted by a man who thinks foie gras is a brand of pâté." For 3 seconds nobody moved. Then a slow clap started. It came from table 2, deep in the shadows of the corner. Julian spun around, furious. "Who is that? Who thinks this is funny?" A man stood up from table 2. He was older, with silver hair and a tailored charcoal suit. He walked into the light. Julian's face went from red to ghost white in an instant. It was Henri Delacroix, the owner of L'Orangerie. But more than that, Henri Delacroix was the chairman of the Global Luxury Group, the conglomerate that was currently in talks to acquire Julian's company, Vertex Dynamics. It was the deal that Julian needed to save his company from bankruptcy. "Monsieur Delacroix," Julian stammered. I didn't know you were here." Henri Delacroix didn't look at Julian. He walked straight up to Sonny. "Mademoiselle," Henri said, his voice deep and grave. "That was the most beautiful use of the subjunctive tense I have heard in 20 years. Henri turned to Julian. His eyes were cold as ice. "Get out of my restaurant," Henri said softly. "But, Henri, the deal," Julian pleaded, sweat beading on his forehead. "There is no deal," Henri said. "I do not do business with men who lack basic dignity. If you treat a waitress this way, I can only imagine how you treat your employees and your shareholders. The acquisition is off." The silence that followed Henri Delacroix's declaration was heavier than the oak doors of the restaurant. Julian Thorpe stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish on a dock. His brain, usually a calculator for risk and reward, was misfiring. He had just lost a multi-billion-dollar acquisition because he wanted to bully a waitress about sweetbreads. You can't be serious," Julian stammered, his voice losing its booming quality, reduced to a whine. "Henry, this is a misunderstanding. She was rude. I heard everything, Julian," Henry said, stepping closer. The older man was shorter than Julian, but he radiated a power that made him seem 10 feet tall. "I was sitting 10 feet away. I heard you insult her intelligence, her poverty, and her dignity. And then I watched her dismantle you with more class in her little finger than you have in your entire board of directors." Henri snapped his fingers. 2 large security guards, dressed in black suits that strained against their muscles, materialized from the shadows of the foyer. "Escort Mr. Thorpe out," Henri ordered, "and ensure he is permanently banned from all properties owned by the Delacroix Group. Hotels, restaurants, resorts, all of it." Julian's face turned from white to a mottled, angry red. "You'll regret this, Delacroix. I'll bury you. I'll short your stock until it's worthless." As the guards moved to grab his arms, Julian jerked away. He turned to Isabella, who was still sitting at the table, clutching her purse. "Come on!" Julian barked at her. "We're leaving. This place is a dump anyway." Isabella didn't move. She looked at Julian, seeing him clearly for the first time. The expensive suit, the watch, the power, it was all a costume covering a small, cruel child. She looked at Sonny, who was standing tall despite the adrenaline crashing through her system. "No," Isabella said softly. "What did you say?" Julian hissed. Isabella stood up. She was trembling, but her chin was high. "I said no, Julian. I'm not going with you. I'm tired of you treating waiters like dirt. I'm tired of you treating me like an accessory you can. Upgrade. I'm taking a cab. You walk out that door without me, and you're finished." Julian screamed as the guards grabbed him by the elbows. "You're nothing without me. Nothing." "I'd rather be nothing than be with you," Isabella said, her voice gaining strength. The guards dragged Julian toward the exit. He was shouting profanities, threatening lawsuits, screaming that he was a genius and everyone else was a peasant. Then the heavy doors slammed shut, cutting off his voice. The restaurant exhaled. Henri Delacroix turned back to Sonny. The room was still watching. "Mademoiselle," Henri said, his expression softening, "I apologize that you had to endure that in my establishment. It was unacceptable." "Thank you, Monsieur Delacroix," Sonny said, finally allowing her shoulders to drop. "But I can handle men like Julian. They are loud, but they are fragile." Henri chuckled. "Indeed. Tell me, what is your full name?" "Sonny Vance." "Sonny Vance," Henri repeated, committing it to memory. "Jean-Luc, comp everyone's dessert tonight. On the house. We need to sweeten the mood." As the dining room returned to a buzz of excited whispers, everyone discussing the drama they had just witnessed, Henri handed Sonny a business card. It was heavy, cream-colored cardstock with gold embossing. "I know you are studying," Henri said. "Jean-Luc tells me you are brilliant. But if you ever decide you want to leave academia, call me. I need people who can handle lions without blinking." Sonny tucked the card into her apron. "I'll keep that in mind, sir." But the night wasn't over. By the time Sonny finished her shift at 11 p.m., the world had changed. She changed out of her uniform in the locker room, her phone buzzing incessantly in her bag. When she finally looked at it, she had 50 missed texts. A patron at Table 5, a young tech influencer named Marcus Ewan, had filmed the entire interaction on his phone. He had live-streamed it to TikTok. The video, titled "Waitress Roasts Billionaire in Fluent French Skull #Zier #Karma," already had 4.5 million views. Sonny sat on the locker room bench, watching the video. She saw herself, back straight, eyes fierce. She heard her perfect French, She saw Julian's humiliation. The comments were scrolling so fast she couldn't read them. "Queen! Give her the company! Julian Thorpe is toast. Stock is gonna tank tomorrow. I need to learn French just to insult my ex like this." Sunny felt a surge of anxiety. She didn't want fame. She wanted a degree. She wanted anonymity. Julian Thorpe was a vengeful man, and now, thanks to the internet, his humiliation was global. He wouldn't just let this go. She walked out of the staff entrance into the cool night air of the alleyway. "Sunny!" She jumped. Standing by the dumpsters, smoking a slim cigarette, was Isabella. She was still wearing the emerald dress, shivering slightly in the cold. "Isabella?" Sunny asked. "Are you okay?" Isabella dropped the cigarette and crushed it with her heel. "I was waiting for you. I wanted to say thank you for standing up to him. I've been trying to leave him for months, but I was afraid. Seeing you do that gave me the push I needed." "You don't have to thank me," Sunny said. "He's a bully." "He's worse than a bully," Isabella said, her voice dropping to a whisper. She looked around nervously. "He's dangerous, Sunny. You need to be careful. He doesn't lose gracefully. He has a team, a cleanup crew, lawyers, private investigators. He digs up dirt on people who cross him." Sunny gripped her bag tighter. "I have nothing to hide. I'm just a student." Isabella gave her a sad look. "Everyone has something, Sunny, and if they don't, Julian pays people to invent it." Isabella reached into her clutch and pulled out a slip of paper with a phone number on it. "If anything happens, if he comes after you, call me. I know where he keeps the skeletons." Isabella walked away into the night, hailing a yellow cab. Sunny watched her go, the thrill of the victory fading, replaced by the cold, creeping sensation of being hunted. 3 days later, the other shoe dropped. Sunny was sitting in the library of Columbia University, surrounded by stacks of books on 18th century semantics. The viral video had peaked and was starting to fade, though she still got recognized on the street occasionally. She had worn a baseball cap and oversized glasses to campus to avoid attention. Her phone vibrated on the wooden table. It was an email notification. The subject line made her blood run cold. "Urgent. Disciplinary hearing notice. Office of the Dean." Sunny opened it with trembling fingers. "Dear Miss Vance, you are hereby summoned to the Office of the Dean of Arts and Sciences immediately regarding allegations of academic misconduct, plagiarism, and violation of the Student Code of Conduct. Your enrollment has been temporarily suspended pending this hearing." Sunny felt like the floor had opened up beneath her. Plagiarism? She was meticulous. She cited every source. She was paranoid about integrity. She packed her bag, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird, and ran across the campus to the administrative building. The dean's office was a cavernous room, lined with portraits of dead men who looked like they disapproved of everything. Dean Harrington sat behind a massive mahogany desk. He was a man who usually liked Sunny, having praised her work in the past. Today, he wouldn't look her in the eye. Sitting in the corner, in a leather armchair, was a man Sunny didn't know. He was bald, wearing a gray suit that looked expensive but ill-fitting, and he held a briefcase on his lap like a weapon. "Sit down, Ms. Vance," Dean Harrington said, his voice strained. "Dean, what is this?" Sunny asked, sitting on the edge of the chair. "Plagiarism? That's impossible. You know my work." "We have received a dossier," the dean said, gesturing to a thick folder on his desk. "It contains evidence suggesting that your master's thesis, the foundation of your current doctoral work, was significantly lifted from an unpublished manuscript by a French scholar named Jean-Pierre Dubois from the 1990s. "That's a lie," Sunny cried. "I did the research myself. I spent 3 months in the archives in Paris." "The dossier is quite compelling." The man in the corner spoke up. His voice was oily and smooth. "It includes side-by-side comparisons. Paragraphs are identical." "Who are you?" Sunny asked, turning to him. "My name is Arthur Kane," the man smiled, showing too many teeth. "I am legal counsel for the Vertex Dynamics Educational Integrity Trust. We are a non-profit dedicated to rooting out academic fraud." Vertex Dynamics, Julian Thorpe's company. Sonny laughed, a harsh, incredulous sound. This isn't about integrity. This is Julian Thorpe trying to ruin my life because I embarrassed him at dinner. Mr. Thorpe is a concerned donor to this university, Arthur Kane said smoothly. He recently pledged $5 million to the new linguistics wing. When he recognized you in that unfortunate video, he felt it was his duty to look into your background. He was shocked to find these discrepancies. He didn't find them, Sonny snapped. He forged them. She turned to the dean. Dean Harrington, you can't believe this. Julian Thorpe is vindictive. This is retaliation. The dean sighed, rubbing his temples. Sonny, the manuscript they provided looks authentic. It has timestamps. If this is true, we have to expel you. We have to revoke your funding. The university cannot be associated with fraud. Let me see it, Sonny demanded. Arthur Kane slid the folder across the desk. Sonny opened it. It was a masterpiece of forgery. There were photocopies of old, yellowed, typewritten pages that matched her thesis almost word for word. It looked real. It looked like she had stolen everything. This Dubois person, Sonny said, her mind racing. Does he exist? He passed away in 1998, Kane said. Convenient for a plagiarist, isn't it? Stealing from the dead. Sonny felt tears pricking her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. This was Julian's game. He knew he couldn't beat her on intelligence, so he was using his money to rewrite reality. He was trying to take away the one thing she valued more than anything, her mind, her work, her future. I need time to prove this is fake, Sonny said. The disciplinary board meets in 48 hours, the dean said. You have until then to provide counter-evidence. Otherwise, the expulsion stands. Sonny stood up. She grabbed the folder. I'll prove it. And when I do, I'm going to sue you, Mr. Kane, and your boss, for everything you have. Kane just smiled. Good luck, Ms. Vance. Though I suggest you update your resume. I hear L'Orangerie is hiring full-time. Sonny stormed out of the office, the heavy door slamming behind her. She walked out onto the steps of the library, the bright afternoon sun feeling mocking. She felt small. Julian had billions of dollars. He could forge documents, buy deans, and erase history. What did she have? Her phone buzzed. It was Isabella. Text. I saw Kane enter the campus. He's Julian's fixer. What did they do? Sonny's fingers flew across the screen. Text. They accused me of plagiarism. They forged a manuscript. I have 48 hours to prove a dead man didn't write my thesis. A moment later, Isabella replied. Text. Meet me at the St. Regis Hotel Bar, tonight, 8 p.m. Bring the folder. I might know someone who can help. And Sonny, don't come alone if you can help it. Sonny stared at the screen. She needed allies. But who? She was a waitress and a student. Then, she remembered the card in her apron pocket. The cream-colored card with gold embossing. Henri Delacroix. He had said, I need people who can handle lions. She wasn't sure if asking a billionaire to fight another billionaire was a good idea, but she was out of options. She pulled out the card and dialed the number. Delacroix office, a crisp voice answered. Hello, Sonny said, her voice shaking slightly. My name is Sonny Vance. Mr. Delacroix gave me his card. I have a problem with a lion. There was a pause. One moment, Mademoiselle Vance. Monsieur Delacroix has been expecting your call. A sleek black Maybach pulled up to the curb where Sonny stood shivering. The rear door opened, and a cloud of warm, expensive, leather-scented air wafted out. Henri Delacroix sat inside, reading a newspaper on a tablet. He gestured for her to enter. Get in, Sonny. We have work to do. Sonny slid onto the plush leather seat. The car began to move instantly, gliding through the New York traffic like a shark through water. You believe me? Sonny asked, her voice tight. I am a businessman, Sonny, Henri said, setting his tablet aside. I deal in facts. The fact is, Julian Thorpe is desperate. His company, Vertex, is hemorrhaging money. He needs a distraction. He needs a villain to slay so he can look like a hero to his board. You are that villain. He forged a thesis, Sonny said, gripping the folder. It looks perfect. Nothing is perfect, Henri corrected. Lies always have cracks. We just need a microscope to find them. The car didn't head to the St. Regis, where Isabella was waiting. Instead, it drove to a nondescript brick building in Chelsea. Where are we going? To pick up a friend. And then, we meet Ms. Isabella, Henri said. I took the liberty of contacting her after you called me. She is waiting for us with some interesting digital files. Inside the brick building, they were met by a woman named Dr. Eris Thorne. She was a forensic document examiner with sharp eyes and ink-stained fingers. Let's see it, Eris said, taking the folder from Sonny without pleasantries. They huddled around a large drafting table under bright halogen lights. Eris examined the, quote, 1990s manuscript with a jeweler's loupe. The paper stock is correct for the era, Eris muttered. He went to the trouble of buying vintage typewriter paper. Smart. Sonny's heart sank. So it holds up? Wait, Eris said. She turned on a UV light and scanned the pages. She paused at page 42. Here. What? Sonny asked, leaning in. The ink, Eris said, pointing to a microscopic smudge. This wasn't typed. This was printed using an inkjet printer designed to mimic typewriter keystrokes. It's a very expensive, very illegal technique used for forging wills. Can you prove it? Henri asked. Chemical analysis of the ink will prove it contains polymers that didn't exist until 2005, Eris said, smiling grimly. But that takes a week. We need something faster. Sonny looked at the text itself. She read the stolen words. Suddenly her eyes widened. I found it, Sonny whispered. The ink? Eris asked. No, Sonny tapped the page. The language, the linguistics. She looked at Henri, her eyes burning with intensity. The author, Jean-Pierre Dubois, supposedly wrote this in 1996. But look at this sentence. The discourse creates a viral feedback loop similar to social media dynamics. So? Henri asked. The term social media wasn't coined until years later, Sonny said, her mind racing. And look here. He uses the phrase black swan event in the context of economics. That term was popularized by Nassim Taleb in 2007. This manuscript is full of linguistic anachronisms. It's written by someone trying to sound old-fashioned, but unconsciously using modern vocabulary. Henri smiled, a shark-like grin. We have him. The car ride to the St. Regis was tense but triumphant. They met Isabella in a private suite. She looked pale, bags under her eyes, but she held a USB drive in her hand. He keeps backups of everything, Isabella said, her voice trembling. He's paranoid. He recorded the call with Arthur Kane where he ordered the forgery. He wanted leverage over Kane in case he ever turned on him. Henri took the USB drive. This is the nail in the coffin. He's holding a press conference tomorrow, Isabella warned, at the university. He's going to announce the donation and expose the academic fraud to the media. He wants to make an example of Sonny to show he's cleaning up the world. Sonny stood up, walking to the window to look out at the city skyline. She saw the Vertex Tower in the distance. He wants a show, Sonny said softly. He wants an audience. She turned back to Henri and Isabella. Let's give him one. The Great Hall of Columbia University was a cathedral of academia, a cavernous space filled with the smell of old wood and the hum of anticipation. Every seat was filled. Students, faculty, and distinguished alumni sat shoulder to shoulder. The back of the room was a phalanx of tripods and cameras. CNN, Fox Business, and Bloomberg were all broadcasting live. Julian Thorpe stood at the mahogany podium, basking in the white strobe of camera flashes. He looked the picture of redemption. He had swapped his aggressive Italian suit for a modest, dark navy Brooks Brothers ensemble. He wore a tie, the color of dried blood, and an expression of practiced, somber concern. It breaks my heart, Julian said into the microphone, his voice catching with fake emotion. Truly, to see a prestigious institution like this defrauded. When I discovered that a student, a waitress no less, had stolen the work of a deceased French scholar, I knew I had to act. Integrity is the bedrock of my company, and it must be the bedrock of this university." He paused for effect, looking out at the audience. Dean Harrington sat behind him, looking pale and miserable, shrinking into his chair. Arthur Kane sat in the front row, his legs crossed, a smug smile plastered on his face as he tapped away on his phone. "That is why," Julian continued, his voice rising with patriotic fervor, "Vertex Dynamics is not only donating $5 million to the linguistics department, but we are also launching the Thorpe Initiative for Academic Honesty. We must root out the rot. We must ensure that those who serve our food do not think they can steal our intellectual property." A ripple of applause started in the front rows, led by Julian's paid staffers. "And what about your own rot, Julian?" The voice didn't come from the stage. It came from the very back of the hall. It was clear, steady, and amplified by the sudden, shocked silence that followed. Heads turned. The camera lenses swung around like the turrets of tanks finding a new target. The heavy double doors at the rear of the auditorium were thrown open. Sunny Vance stood there, silhouetted by the light from the hallway. She wasn't wearing her waitress uniform. She wasn't wearing the oversized hoodie of a student hiding from shame. She was wearing a sharp, tailored black blazer and trousers, borrowed from Isabella. She looked like a CEO coming to claim a hostile takeover. Flanking her were two men. Henri Delacroix, looking grim and powerful, and a tall, severe man carrying a briefcase, a federal prosecutor. And next to them, looking terrified but determined, was Isabella. Julian froze mid-gesture. His eyes darted to the security guards. "Security! Get her out of here! She's expelled! She is trespassing!" Two guards moved toward the aisle, but Henri Delacroix stepped forward, raising a hand. "She is the guest of the chairman of the board," Henri announced, his voice booming. "If you touch her, you will be unemployed before you hit the floor." The guards hesitated, then backed away. The path was clear. Sunny began to walk down the center aisle. Her heels clicked rhythmically on the hardwood floor, a metronome counting down the seconds of Julian's career. The students parted for her, whispering. She kept her eyes locked on Julian. "You have a lot to say about honesty, Mr. Thorpe," Sunny said, her voice projecting without a microphone as she approached the stage. "But you seem to have forgotten the first rule of academia, peer review. This is a press conference, not a debate." Julian shouted, sweat starting to bead on his forehead. "You are a fraud. We have the manuscript. We have the proof." "You have a forgery," Sunny said, climbing the stairs to the stage. She walked right up to the podium. Julian tried to body block her, but Henri stepped in between them, a silent, immovable wall. Sunny took the microphone from the stand. She looked out at the sea of faces, the people who had judged her, the internet trolls who had mocked her, the dean who had suspended her. "Mr. Thorpe claims I plagiarized a manuscript from 1996, Sunny said, holding up the folder containing the forged document. A manuscript, supposedly written by the late Jean-Pierre Dubois. She opened the folder, the pages rustling loudly in the quiet room. "It is a very convincing forgery," she admitted, turning to look Julian in the eye. "Arthur Kane did a wonderful job finding vintage paper. But he made a mistake. A linguistic mistake." Julian laughed nervously. "Oh, here we go. The waitress is going to lecture us on words. Boring." "Tell me, Julian," Sunny asked, her voice turning icy, "in 1996, did French scholars commonly discuss algorithmic bias?" Julian blinked. I don't know. I haven't memorized every word." "It's on page 10, Sunny said, pointing to the text. "And on page 50, the author uses the phrase, tipping point, in the sociological context popularized by Malcolm Gladwell. Gladwell's book wasn't published until the year 2000, 4 years after this manuscript was allegedly written." A murmur went through the crowd. Phones were raised, recording every second. "This manuscript," Sunny declared, slamming the folder shut, "is a linguistic impossibility. It is a time traveler. It uses vocabulary that did not exist when it was supposedly written. It is a fake, created by a man who thinks money can rewrite the dictionary." "Conjecture," Arthur Kane shouted from the front row, standing up. "This is wildly speculative. You can't prove. We didn't just analyze the words, Arthur. Sonny cut him off. We analyzed the ink, and we analyzed the source. She nodded to Isabella, who was standing near the AV control panel at the side of the stage. Isabella's hands were shaking, but she plugged a USB drive into the laptop connected to the auditorium sound system. You wanted to know who helped me? Sonny asked Julian. You should have treated your girlfriend better. Julian's face went white. Bella? No, Bella, don't do it. Isabella hit the spacebar. The massive speakers overhead crackled to life. It wasn't a whisper. It was a shout. The voice was unmistakable. It was Julian Thorpe, angry and unguarded. Audio recording. I don't care how you do it, Arthur. Just copy her thesis and change the dates. Make her look like a thief. I want her destroyed. Use the inkjet method. Nobody checks that anymore. I want that waitress back to scrubbing floors where she belongs. Arthur's voice on the recording. It will cost you, Julian. Forging a dead man's work is a felony. Julian's voice. I'll pay you double. Just bury her. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a vacuum before an explosion. Then the room erupted. Reporters were shouting questions. Flashes were blinding. Dean Harrington stood up, looking like he was about to vomit. Arthur Kane tried to bolt for the side exit, but two campus police officers, who had been signaled by the federal prosecutor, tackled him before he reached the door. Sonny turned to look at Julian. He was gripping the podium, his knuckles white, his mouth opening and closing like a fish on dry land. The arrogance had evaporated, leaving only a small, terrified man in an expensive suit. You called me stupid, Sonny said, her voice amplified through the speakers, calm and devastating. You said I couldn't read the menu. You said I was a peasant. She stepped closer, invading his personal space, forcing him to look at her. You underestimated the waitress. But worse, you underestimated the scholar. Because in my world, Mr. Thorpe, we check our sources, and we never, ever leave a paper trail. Julian lunged at her, his face twisted in a mask of pure rage. You bitch! I'll kill you! I'll buy this whole school and burn it down! Henri Delacroix moved faster than a man of 60 should. He caught Julian's wrist in midair, twisting it behind his back with a practiced, painful torque that forced the billionaire to his knees. Julian cried out in pain, collapsing at Sonny's feet. That's enough, Henri said, his voice low and dangerous. The show is over, Julian. Police officers swarmed the stage. They hauled Julian up, pulling his arms behind his back. The click of handcuffs echoed through the microphone. As they dragged him toward the wings of the stage, Julian looked back, his eyes wild, searching for anyone to save him. He locked eyes with Isabella. Bella! Help me, he screamed, desperate. Tell them it's a mistake. I'll buy you the ring. I'll buy you the house. Anything. Isabella walked to the center of the stage. She touched the diamond necklace at her throat, the one he had insulted at dinner, the one he used to control her. You don't get it, Julian, she said, her voice trembling but gaining strength. I don't want the ring. She unclasped the necklace. It shimmered under the stage lights as she held it out. Then she dropped it. It hit the wooden floor with a hollow clack. It's fake, Isabella said into the silence. Just like you. She turned her back on him and walked to stand beside Sonny. The two women watched as the billionaire was dragged into the darkness of the backstage area, his shouts fading away, replaced by the thunderous sound of 1,000 people standing up and cheering. 2 months later, the fall of Julian Thorpe was absolute. The fraud charges, combined with the stock manipulation revealed by the SEC investigation, led to a sentence of 15 years in federal prison. Vertex Dynamics was dissolved, and its assets sold off. Sonny sat at a table in l'Orangerie, but this time she wasn't wearing an apron. She was wearing a graduation gown. Her doctoral hood lay on the chair next to her. Henri Delacroix sat across from her, pouring a bottle of wine. 1982 Petrus, Henri said with a wink. I checked. It's not corked. Sunny laughed. It was a light, free sound. I should hope not. So, Dr. Vance, Henri said, raising his glass, you have your Ph.D. You have offers from Harvard, Yale, and the Sorbonne. What will you do? Sunny took the glass. She looked around the restaurant. She saw Jean-Luc winking at her from the maitre d' stand. She saw the new waitress, a young girl who looked terrified, spilling a drop of water on table 4. Sunny stood up. She walked over to the young waitress, who looked like she was about to cry. It's okay, Sunny whispered to the girl, placing a hand on her shoulder. Take a breath. You're doing fine. The girl looked up, recognizing Sunny. You're her, the one from the video. I am, Sunny said. She walked back to Henri. I'm going to take the position at the Sorbonne, Sunny said, sitting down, but on one condition. Name it, Henri said. You start a scholarship fund, she said. For service industry workers who want to get their degrees. No one should have to choose between feeding themselves and feeding their mind. Henri smiled, clinking his glass against hers. Done, he said, to the waitress who silenced a billionaire. No, Sunny corrected him, taking a sip of the exquisite wine, to the woman who read the menu. And that is how Sunny Vance turned a moment of humiliation into a total victory. Julian Thorpe thought his money made him untouchable, but he forgot that true power comes from knowledge, integrity, and the courage to stand your ground. He tried to break her, but he only revealed his own cracks. In the end, the golden table couldn't save him from the truth. If you enjoyed this story of karma and justice, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that arrogance always comes before the fall. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.